Thank you to Stewart Shops for sponsoring our school bus transportation fund through their holiday match program. Since we can't welcome school groups right now, we want to give Stewart's a special shout out every time we bring online educational programming to you. We look forward to seeing those school buses again soon. Hi everybody, it's Dina Mallory, Director of Public Programs at Bennington Museum, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the mural that you find when you walk into the Bennington Battle Gallery. It's a pretty interesting one, and we're going to look at it right up close today. It's hard to even get the whole thing in the camera. It's so big. We're going to look at it up close, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like from far away when you first walk into the room. Now, this painting was made not right after the Battle of Bennington. In fact, it was made in the 1930s. But the artist who made it did a lot of research to try to figure out who would have been at the battle, what they would have been wearing, what kinds of uniforms they would have had on, what kinds of things they would have carried with them. We know now that he did make some mistakes, but he did a pretty good job of showing us all of the many different people who were involved in the Battle of Bennington. He also did a pretty good job of showing us that uniforms were a little bit confusing. When we think of the Revolutionary War, we usually think of the British wearing red, like these guys over here, and the Americans wearing blue, like this guy over here. But as we start to look at this painting, we notice a whole lot else going on. First of all, we have these guys. They're wearing green. Who do you suppose they are? We also have these guys who are wearing blue, who are different in some ways than some of the other guys wearing blue. We have more people wearing green over here. We have Native Americans in the middle. Some of them have this hairstyle, the Mohawk hairstyle. Some of them have long hair and braids and blue and red caps. Then we've got a bunch of people who aren't wearing any uniform at all. They're just wearing ordinary clothes. So how do we tell who is who? Well, this painting is a painting of Bennington after the battle. It's a painting called Prisoners Taken at the Battle of Bennington. So that gives us a big clue about what's going on in this painting. We know that it's after the battle. How else could you tell that it's after the battle? If this were during a battle, what would be different about this painting? If it were before a battle, what would be different about this painting? We know that it's after the battle. There's a few clues. First of all, we've got women and children in the painting. Usually they're not part of battles. We also have wounded people. We can guess that that probably happened during a battle. Another big clue that it's not during a battle is that nobody's actively fighting, right? They're holding their guns. This guy's just being, he's being dramatic. But they're not pointing their guns at each other. Some people are smiling as if maybe they were victorious. Other people are looking a little less happy, as if maybe they lost the battle. And then if we come way back over here to the right side of the painting, what's going on with these guys? They're in ropes, right? So they're prisoners. So the next big question to ask is, well, which people in the painting were the winners of the battle? And which people in the painting were the losers of the battle? What clues can you look for to figure that out? Well, usually if you've lost a battle and you've been taken prisoner, there are certain things you don't get to keep, like your weapons and your horses. So let's start by looking at, well, the horses. That's probably easy. So we can see that this guy has a horse, and we can see that he clearly has a weapon. That gives us a big clue that he is on the winning side of this battle. And as a matter of fact, that's General John Stark, who was the leader of the American troops at this battle. And he's wearing blue, we can see that. And we've got this person on a horse, and it looks like he's raising a gun over his head. So that tells us that this person, and probably all of the other people that are dressed like him, are also on the winning side of the battle. But what about these guys? They are also Native Americans. They look a little different. I don't see any of them with weapons. That tells me that they may be on the losing side of the battle. So here we can tell that we have two different groups of Native Americans. One group that was on the winning side and one group that was on the losing side. All right, how about these guys on the horses? They're still on the horses, they still have their weapons. They must be on the winning side of the battle. But wait a minute. Weren't those guys in ropes also wearing green? That would make me think that those guys are on the losing side of the battle. And what about these guys wearing blue? None of them have their weapons. Are they on the losing side? And look at all of those guys in the background wearing blue. I don't see any weapons sticking up. I don't see their muskets on their shoulders. That makes me think that they're on the losing side too. Well, one thing that I noticed right away about a lot of those guys in blue is those hats that they're wearing, the kind of pointy hats. Those are different than the hat that General Stark is wearing. They're different than the hat that this guy with his weapon is wearing, or that this guy with his weapon is wearing. Some of the guys in blue do have hats like the other guys, the winning side guys, but if we look carefully at them, we do see some differences. These guys have feathers in their caps, and they all seem to have these sort of handlebar mustaches. Can you see those? So could it be possible that some of the winners were wearing blue and some of the people on the losing side were also wearing blue? Who are these guys with the pointy hats? Now these guys, it's pretty easy. We know they're on the losing side. First of all, they don't have any weapons or horses. There's something else that gives us a clue that their things haven't gone their way today. Look at their faces. They don't look too happy. Not like these guys up here, who look pretty pleased. Or these guys over here, who also look pretty pleased. And knowing what we do about the Revolutionary War, it's a pretty good guess that these guys are part of the British Army. They're wearing red, they're wearing that tricorn hat that we're familiar with, and we know they're on the losing side. So who are these guys? Well, during the Revolutionary War, a group of Vermonters became pretty important, and they were called the Green Mountain Boys. So these guys, with their green coats, with the red trim, those are called facings, the parts of the coat in this guy's uniform that you see that are red, the cuffs and the trim of his jacket. Those are the facings. Those are the Green Mountain Boys. And they were fighting on the side of the Americans. These guys, the Mohawk Indians, were fighting on the side of the British. Whereas these guys, the Stockbridge Indians, were fighting on the side of the Americans. This group of people over here, also wearing green like the Green Mountain Boys, but if you look carefully, different facings, right? They have white trim instead of the red that the Green Mountain Boys had. They are supposed to be loyalists. So those were people who lived here in the colonies, but they weren't fighting for independence from Great Britain. They were loyal to Great Britain, loyal to the King of Britain. Now, it's interesting that they're the only ones in robes. I think the loyalists were even more hated by the Patriots than the British were. So maybe it was extra insult to have them led into town in robes. This character here, we're not sure who he was, but the story is that one of the wealthier residents of the town sent out her servant to bring in the Loyalists in ropes. Now, given that this was the 1700s, the status of this guy, whether he was a free man or not, was probably pretty low. So the symbolism of him being the one leading the Loyalists in is pretty significant. What does that say about how people felt about the Loyalists? If this guy's status in society is pretty low, and he's the one on horseback leading them into town. All right, let's get back to these other guys in blue with the pointy hats. Do you know who they were? Well, they were fighting for the British, and they were German-speaking soldiers. They were Hessians and Brunswickers. Mostly Brunswickers at the Battle of Bennington, but the Americans just called them all Hessians. And they were hired by the British Army to help them fight the Revolutionary War. At the Battle of Bennington, most of the British soldiers were actually these German-speaking Hessian or Brunswick soldiers. So all of these different players, imagine playing a football game, right? The point of a uniform is that you all look the same, so you know who's on your team. So imagine playing a football game where some of your teammates were wearing red, some of them were wearing green, some of them were wearing blue, and just to make it even more complicated, on the other side, some of the players were wearing green, some of them were wearing blue, some of them weren't wearing uniforms at all, just their regular gym clothes. It must have been terribly confusing. I wonder how they kept everything straight. There's so much to find in this painting. I wish we could spend some time together today looking at it and talking about it. Maybe when you come to visit the museum, when we reopen, we can look at this painting together and discover even more things. I sure hope so. Until then, keep learning.